another edition of the King Kong Trail. I'm Amy Vandiver, sitting next to my husband Doug, and we have a very special guest in our studio today. This is a guest that we met outside of Burlington by the Book, so shout out to Chris for having local authors tell their stories and a place for them to be able to share their books. But we have a local author with a very interesting story, so I'd like to introduce Dan Grinstead to everybody.
Good morning. Or maybe it's afternoon, I don't know.
It'll post in the morning,
okay.
So it will be a morning when people get to hear it.
All right.
Well, welcome to the King Kong Trail, and this is your first time on here.
Yes.
But you just have an amazing story that you've written a book about, and you were sitting outside of Burlington by the Book, like I said, with a couple of our King Kong Trail friends, Ned and Russ. And,
Ned and Russ are my friends, too, from way, way back.
Oh, so you probably have some really great stories.
We all went to school together.
Okay.
So we all had the same teachers
Mm-hmm.
and went to the same school, and we were all Boy Scouts together. So we've known each other for a long time.
Oh, okay.
So you're actually from this area?
I'm from West Burlington.
Okay. Well, welcome home.
It's good to be here.
You're not residing in the area?
No, I live in Iowa City now.
Okay. All right. So you probably tell us some stories about Ned and Russ.
Well, Russ used to joke that he could only count to 9 because his big toe got amputated, I think, if I recall correctly, in a go-kart incident.
I think they told us that story or alluding to it one time. So how long have you been living up in the Iowa City area?
I moved there in 75 right after graduate school.
Okay. So you've seen the whole highway change.
I have.
It is so much better nowadays.
It is, yeah. 218 was always fun because when I used to drive 218, I had a Volkswagen Beetle, which meant that I had to go down the hills as fast as I could in order to get up the other side.
So this is before my time. I do not know what it was like to go to Iowa City before 218. So was it just like a dirt road? Or?
No, it was paved, but then you had to go through the little towns, like Swedesburg and Wayland and Crawfordsville and all those places. Maybe not Wayland, but
more stop signs in between too. What's there now? Well, there is no stop signs now, but
yeah, and you also had to go through the middle of Danville and the middle of New London, and
okay.
I remember making trips up there when I was a kid, getting tubes in my ears, and Mom would always, she'd have to throw me in the station wagon, and we'd drive up there, and I love the highway much better now.
That's right.
Gets there quicker, but
it does.
So
a lot of memories on 218. My favorite memory of 218 is there was a house that had a wind vane that was in the shape of an airplane.
Oh.
And it had propellers on it. So when you go by, you could see the wind vane and the propellers spinning. I thought that was very neat.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. So, growing up in West Burlington,
yes,
you went to what was the elementary school, and the middle school's not there anymore.
Right.
So, did you go to that middle school?
I did. We when I think I was the second or third graduating class from West Burlington High School. When I was in school, when I started, we went through junior high there and then came to Burlington for high school. Okay. And then there was a big push that we should have our own high school, and that was very controversial at the time.
Yeah, I remember as a kid, we moved from Burlington to West Burlington, and I never got the rivalry, I guess, until I moved out there, and it was kind of, West Burlington's a little bit better. But and I don't even know if they say it nowadays, but I remember the people in West Burlington or Burlington will be like, West by God Burlington.
I don't remember that one, but I can see where that would come from.
Yeah. So, well, you've got quite a story.
Yeah, it's pretty unique, I think.
Well, like I said, we ran into you downtown, and let's talk about that story.
Okay. Well, starting from the beginning, I'd been a longtime social worker at the University of Iowa hospitals.
Okay.
And I worked, at the time this story started, I was working on an inpatient psychiatric unit. And one of the psychiatric residents was in the Iowa National Guard. And he said to me one day, he said, Dan, the Guard is looking for people like you. And I said, well, that's interesting, but you got to know I'm old. And I was in my 50s at the time. And he said, have you ever heard of anything called a waiver? I said, no, I hadn't heard about that. And he said, well, there's a way to get by your age by getting a waiver. And I said, okay, how do we do that? And he says, if you talk to the recruiter, they'll get the ball started for you. So I said, okay, let's talk to the recruiter. The recruiter came down to see me in my office at the hospital, and he said, all right, in order to get this ball rolling, you need to prove that you can pass the Army physical fitness test. I had no idea what that was, so I said, well, what is it? And he says, you got to run 2 miles, you got to do sit-ups and push-ups. And I kind of laughed at the 2-mile run bit, because I was running marathons at the time, and so 2 miles was barely a warm-up.
Right.
You know, it's like, okay, 2 miles is no issue. And then he said, go do it, and I did, and I passed, and he said, okay, we'll run it up the chain of command. And it took forever to do that. I think it probably took 6-7 months for that to get through. And it did. And when he came down and he said, well, let's have you take the oath of office. So he told me the date, and I invited my mom, my wife, of course. And so we were in my office. And before he gave me the oath of office, he said to my mom, who was in her 80s at the time, is it okay with you if Dan joins the Iowa Guard? And my mom looked at him without a blink and said, yeah, however, he can't play with guns and he can't go to war. And my recruiter said, all right, all you got to do is write a letter to the commanding general for an excuse. I think that letter got lost, because it never happened. So then I took the oath of office and began the journey.
How old? You said over 50.
Yeah.
How old were you actually when you took the oath of office?
I believe I was 57.
57. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, when I went through boot camp back in '90, we had a gentleman in our barracks that was 33, because I believe at the time it was 34 was the cutoff for enlisted, and we affectionately called him Gramps.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, going in at 50.
57.
57. Did you get ribbed a little bit?
I did. When I got a direct commission, so I came in as First Lieutenant Dan.
Okay.
So
Lieutenant Dan.
I was called Lieutenant Dan by everybody. So that was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So when you were in the military and you started, did you had a specialty that you're going in for?
Yes. Yeah, I was commissioned as a social worker, which was what I was, and the idea would be that I would provide counseling to soldiers who are having difficulty, either pre-deployment or post-deployment. And so that meant that I would see a lot of things of people who'd been deployed before were having PTSD problems. And so we would talk about that. And then there were the usual issues associated with just being a person, depression and spouse problems and family problems and all those kinds of things. So it was all areas that I was pretty used to, except for the post-traumatic stress disorder.
I'm trying to think. It was the PTSD. I don't remember anything like that being talked about when I was in.
Right.
So this the term PTSD, and I know they've called it various things through the years.
Yes.
But it seems to have gained a lot more traction that people are willing to talk about.
Right. It has, and it's as long as there have been wars, there's been trauma associated with wars.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember all the names right now, but combat fatigue, for example. And what makes me mad is the D in post-traumatic stress disorder, because I'm thinking, this isn't any disorder. This is post-traumatic stress caused by my job. Don't label me with having some sort of a disorder.
Sure.
So that's how I get on my bandwagon and high horse and say, get rid of that D.
Well, I was looking at some statistics, and on discharge, it said 38% of military people, when they're discharged, had some type of like a mental health code on it. It was like 18% depression, alcohol use 17, anxiety 15, but PTSD kind of surprised me. It was only 3%. So, of course, this is 38% of everyone who's been discharged.
Right.
And so I don't know if it's been more, like you said, there's more awareness of it now. So the number's probably really skewed. But what did you see with that kind of through the service unit you were in?
Well, I was in a medical company.
Mm-hmm.
And during the deployment to Afghanistan, which started in 2010, we left Iowa in July of 2010 and went to Camp Shelby in Mississippi first for training, and then to Fort Irwin in California for more realistic training. But the number one issue that I ran across in Afghanistan were sleep issues. A lot of people that I saw couldn't sleep. So we developed, my assistant, Sergeant Ehrlich, and I developed a treatment program specifically for sleep issues. And so we called it sleep hygiene. And so we'd ask just a few questions, because our soldiers would have misconceptions about what would help them sleep and didn't realize that things that they were doing hindered sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a couple examples. When we went to Afghanistan, the last thing in my mind was to pack my PlayStation or whatever video game device I had. I'm thinking, why would I even do that? Well, the soldiers all packed their PlayStations, and as soon as they got home from a mission, that's the first thing they would do, is they retire to wherever they were staying and start playing video games. And they wouldn't stop until they tried to go to sleep at night. And they didn't realize, and we would teach them, do you know that your video game gives off a blue light, and your eyes and brain interpret that blue light as being daylight? So when you play that game until right when you're trying to go to sleep, your body thinks it's daytime and therefore wants to stay awake. So we would say to them, we don't care that you're playing video games. Turn it off a couple hours before you want to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Second thing we would say to them, we would ask, do you smoke or chew? And many did, and we'd say, all right, same effect. Tobacco is an energizer. So about the time you turn off your video game, quit smoking and quit chewing, and see how that goes for you. Then the third thing was the same kind of misconception. Well, I'll exercise right before I go to bed. And that's going to make me tired, and then I'll go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong. Same thing with the other two. Do not exercise, because, again, that's an energizer.
Mm-hmm.
So we put this together for them, and we'd say, okay, you try this first, because nobody wants to take a medicine.
Right.
Nobody wants to take pills. And even though there are pills, sleeping pills, we would say, we don't want you to have to go down that road. Let's try this first.
Mm-hmm.
And then our joking treatment was, eat a turkey sandwich. That was our joke treatment. We try everything else. If it doesn't work, eat a turkey sandwich, because we all know that turkey puts you to sleep.
Yep.
You know, and so they'd get a big kick out of that. And
Well, I think we just discovered a new routine for our kids.
Yes, we were actually, that's kind of interesting because we were actually talking about what are we going to have for our summer routine for our kids, because they do like to play the video games, and so they play video games, but I also will scroll every once in a while. I'm kind of getting away from that. But I mean, there are so many instances where it's just so easy to turn on a TV, turn on a, you know, and it's good. That's interesting that you brought up the sleep hygiene part of it. And the video games and things like that. And I think the U.S. Surgeon General just put out something about social media and the effects of that on youth.
Right.
But then you're kind of going towards the older and how it affects the military, you know, and you know, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and then the other thing we could say to try is try something that gives off white noise.
Okay.
So a lot of guys would have fans,
Mm-hmm.
and that noise of the fan is considered to be white noise.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, you just get into listening to that white noise, and that too is an aid to sleep. You know, and so that would be another method to try before getting into the sleeping pills.
Right, because you know with the pills you run into now I'm too tired, so now I have to have a Red Bull to keep me awake, a sleeping pill to put me to sleep. And
who wants that? You know.
Well, also in the combat situation, you need to wake up.
You do need to wake up. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. Yeah, when those sirens go off, you know you better jump too. So here's the siren story. So we'd been in Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan for just a couple days, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the sirens went off, and they said, incoming, don your protective gear. Okay, fine, we can do that. But being Iowans, we all know what you do when the siren goes off. You go outside.
You watch for the tornado.
Watch for the tornado. Right, exactly. That's what we're accustomed to, and that's kind of the stimulus response for Iowans. Okay, well, I don't see anything to you. Well, of course, that was wrong. But that's what we all did. And this was just 2 days after he'd been there. We were still not caught up on time, and so it was, you know, okay, let's go out and see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Then after a while, you know, you kind of get an idea to get used to that, and they'd say shelter in place. Well, my issue was, whenever the siren went off, I discovered that I needed to urinate. And we lived in shipping containers, and the bathroom was one floor down and about 6 shipping containers over. All right, so do you go there or discover another use for Gatorade jugs? Okay, so the simpler answer was, get the Gatorade bottle out and just remember, don't drink the yellow Gatorade.
Okay.
That's a little tip, you know. That yellow Gatorade is not good.
I'm never going to go to Walmart and pass by that aisle and think of Gatorade the same way I do right now.
Yeah, you know, and that was, you know, who wants to get up, walk downstairs, go over 5 or 6 containers just to urinate? You
Right.
know, let's be smart about this.
But it's a natural response, I guess.
Well, yeah, you know, you don't know what's coming. You know, and you could sort of hear the booms once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you knew that the bad guys were just taking pot shots at us. They were just shooting and scooting because, you know, they would, if they hit something, they'd say, "Oh, good for us." And most of the time they didn't. And since we were at the air base, who knows? They might hit a plane, or they might just hit the runway. Anyway, it just makes us mad. And that's kind of the ultimate goal, or it wakes us up at night. You know, if we don't hit anything, okay, those silly Americans had to get up and get their heads counted to make sure we were all okay.
Gotcha. just kind of disrupt the schedule a little bit.
That's right. That's right. You know, and
Yeah.
that was all part of their plan, at least. Is and they were smart enough to know that if they shot a rocket at us, they either could set it off by a timer, which meant they set it up, set the timer, and got the hell out of there, because they knew that we could figure out where that rocket came from. So you don't want to stand around and enjoy your work, because pretty soon it's going to be a little green helicopter coming flying over your head that's going to see you and
take care of business.
take care of business. You're going to go meet Allah sooner than you planned.
So that happened to you the second day you were there?
Second day we were there. Okay, this is going to be interesting.
How often did that happen? Weekly, every other day?
Oh, pretty much weekly, every once in a while. And then from Bagram, I was sent out to a forward operating base named Medterlam. And it happened less there than it did at Bagram, because there were fewer targets at Medterlam. It wasn't worth them wasting a rocket on us.
So you were at an air base the first time. What was the second place?
The second place was Medterlam, a forward operating base, and that was my home forward operating base, or as we would say, FOB. I'll throw in some military language here so that you can educate yourself. So FOB is a forward operating base.
Okay.
The place where you eat your lunch is called a DFAC, dining facility. It's not a mess hall, it's a DFAC.
Huh.
Okay, so you go to the DFAC for lunch, and that's...
Is it DFAC for your dining facility? Is that the National Guard ease or?
No, that's Army.
That's Army. Okay.
That's Army talk.
'Cause I was wondering if the Navy had the same. Because who has? Well, where's the mess hall at? What branch
Yeah.
the mess hall?
Well, we all have different vocabularies. Okay, so the Navy and the Marines and the Coast Guard all go to the head to relieve themselves.
Yep.
The Army, we don't go to the head, we go to the latrine.
Okay.
All right, so it gets confusing. So I asked an Air Force guy one day, I said, what's the Air Force word for the bathroom? And he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, we call it the bathroom. I said, okay.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
All right, Air Force.
That's Air Force for you.
Yeah. So it was, but out at Medterlam was the real work started, because our troops were going out on missions every day. And their mission was twofold. One, just to fly the flag and let the bad guys know we're still here. And so they would go out, and there were a few roads because it was mountainous, and so there weren't a lot of ways in and out of the base. But they would go on those routes every day to look for bad guys. And the bad guys knew, of course, that we were going out. And one of the things that we were told when you go to the DFAC, do not talk about missions, because the employees at the DFAC were all Afghanis. Okay, so you look at these employees, they're all men, and you would say, well, these guys, for example, who were scooping up ice cream, only knew 2 or 3 words: vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, 1 scoop or 2. And you didn't think that they understood much English other than that, but I can guarantee you that they did. So you don't want to be sitting at the table enjoying your ice cream.
Giving away intel.
Giving away intel. By the way, there was a rule: if there was ice cream, you had to eat it, because you never knew whether there won't be ice cream tomorrow.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. You don't talk about mission like wouldn't say, "Oh, we're going out tomorrow at 0600 on route whatever," just to show the flag, because you knew that those ice cream servers would spread that word on.
Yeah. Well, the Navy, they would say loose lips sink ships.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Same thing. And then the other thing we were to be aware of is you were watching the Afghanis, who were all over the place, and you would watch them where they were walking to and see if they were walking oddly, like they were counting distance. Because if they were counting distance between buildings or something, you would think they're going to go home and draw a map and give that to their buddies with the rockets. And so you pay attention to little details like that, just to make sure.
Well, I can understand how that would be, hard. Getting back to, your studies on the sleep and with the military, just knowing that not only are you going out of your base to take care of what you need to take care of, but, you're surrounded by it no matter where you're at.
That's right. And, it was a chess match.
Mm-hmm.
The chess match goes like this. In the beginning, the bad guys would set off their explosive devices, their IEDs, with garage door openers. They'd wire a garage door opener to their improvised explosive device, and when they saw us drive by, they just pushed the button to open the garage door and the device would explode. Well, we figured that out, and so we would put jammers on our trucks to jam radio signals, and so that stopped that for a while. Then pretty soon, the next move by the bad guys was, we're just going to have this guy standing out in the field with a switch. And they knew that the rules of engagement, if this guy's just standing out in the field, looks like he's plowing the field or herding the goats or whatever, that we're not going to shoot him because he's not doing anything.
Right.
Now, if he had a rifle and pointed at us, the story would be different. But if he's standing out there in the field, just tending the livestock, we're going to leave him alone, so then he could push the button from the wire that he's got hidden in his hand and get us that way. Okay. So then we figured out, okay, let's send people out in the beginning and look for wires. So you would have the people in our trucks just looking out the window, looking for wires and see if they could see wires, and if they did, they'd stop and defuse that bomb. All right. So the chess match continues, and the next thing was to use a pressure plate, which meant that when the truck drives over this plate, it would connect the circuit, and the bomb would go off.
Uh-huh.
Now, that worked just very well, with the exception was that if you and the family are going to mosque on Friday and you happen to drive over this pressure plate, boom, you're gone. But they didn't care. That's just the cost of doing business. Just because the family ran over the pressure plate, we'll get the Americans the next time. So all this kind of stuff going on all the time. So the Afghanis, did a lot of things other than working in the DFAC. They also ran the laundry, and uniforms. We kept track of our uniforms so that nobody could swipe uniforms and just slip on a uniform and come on up to the gate and say, hey, here I am, let me in. And so we were very careful with that. And also, we had an Afghani barber. So you go to see the barber, and it's just like a normal barber. Anywhere
chit-chat.
You have a little talk. How's the family? You doing okay? Yeah, everything's fine. And then he'd get out the clippers and clip your hair, and then pretty soon at the end he'd say, would you like those small hairs at the back of your neck trimmed off? And then he pulls out a straight razor that's about 6 inches long, and you have this momentary pause, and you think, is he really going to shave off those little hairs at the back of my neck, or is he going to shave my head off? See, it gives you pause, and then you think, well, this guy is probably the richest guy in the village, because he's cutting 50, 60 heads of hair every day and getting paid well to do that. So why would he jeopardize all that income just to get rid of one of us?
Did that ever happen?
No.
But just the psychological.
Just psychological, you're thinking to yourself, okay. Maybe it was just me being paranoid, but, very likely, there was little Afghani shops on the base too, on the FOB. So if you wanted to get the latest suit made, there was an Afghani tailor there who would measure up and make you a suit. And there was also a little 7-Eleven like place that you could go in and get a bottle of pop or whatever. No beer, but a bottle of pop, and you could buy the latest DVD as well. And of course, that DVD was illegal because it had been pirated someplace.
Mhm.
But, you know, they were, you know, it was kind of a nice diversion because otherwise, you know, what are you going to do?
I've watched many movies sitting in the berthing on my ship, and it was like, you played this 10 times so far.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, any other diversion, that
Yeah.
new movie, whether
Yeah,
it be
that's
legal or
right.
not.
Yeah. So, you know, I got to do a lot of things that I would have never been able to do before.
Mhm.
So, for example, I had 4 other FOBs that I went to, and I went on a regular basis to provide mental health care at those FOBs.
Mhm.
And they would know that I was coming and have soldiers lined up for me to see. The best part of going to the FOBs was I always got to take a helicopter. I didn't have to drive in a truck. Apparently, either I was a valuable asset or they wanted to get me there quick.
Probably a little of both.
Maybe a little bit. But this was not Army helicopters I was flying on. This was a contractor who was contracting the service. And this was an Australian contractor called Molson Air. Molson Air. Like Molson beer. Okay. And
I've never heard of Molson beer.
Molson beer, yeah. So we thought, whoa, boy, the in-flight service is going to be great on these, you know. And but most of the flights were 10, 15 minutes is all. And so you get up and fly through the mountains and get to your next FOB. And so it was always beautiful flights, you know. You see these mountains, and they were gorgeous. And there'd be snow on the peaks, and, you know, it was just beautiful sightseeing. So I always had my camera with me, so I would be the combat tourist taking pictures everywhere that I flew.
Do you have any of those pictures in your book?
I do have pictures in my
Okay.
book, yeah, and I do have pictures from most of the FOBs that I covered in the book too. So
Okay.
that was a good time.
Did you ever get shot at in your helicopter rides?
Not in the helicopter. One night I was in my bunk in the barracks when I heard this big whoosh and then a big bang. And I said, oh, that sounds like a rocket-propelled grenade to me. And then I heard machine guns going off, and I said to myself, oh, those sound like 50 caliber machine guns answering back to whoever the Rocketeer was. And that was in Mederlam. And then in another base named Kalagoosh, same story again. I was in bed already, and I heard this big whoosh followed by a boom, and then another big whoosh followed by a boom, and then another whoosh, and then a boom followed by a whoosh. Okay, so let's put this together. Whoosh, boom means it's incoming. Boom, whoosh means it's outgoing. So boom, whoosh is us, the good guys, shooting back. So there's a little rule of thumb for you. So you whoosh, boom, you better duck. Boom, whoosh, you're saying, yeah, go get them. You know.
Gotcha.
You know, it's just silly stuff like that came to my mind.
It's funny the different ways how people think during, you know, when you're being shot at, when your life is in danger, you know, to where it's, you know, we sit here and think, wow, you know, what would you do if somebody's shooting at you? And you're going, well, that's outbound.
Yeah, you know, and I was probably too naive to be scared. You know, it never, you know, I was never quaking in my boots or nothing like that. You know, I was the guy that you always saw pictures of him running outside in his boxer shorts.
There's the Midwest going.
Looking to take cover. So there's a boxer short story as well.
Oh, okay.
So that was not an intended segue, but here you go. I had a lucky pair of boxer shorts. Everybody had, you know, something that brings them good luck. You know, and my boxer shorts had gnomes on them. And so every time I went outside in Medderlam, I wore my boxer shorts with gnomes on them. Because I figured if I got captured, they'd take one look at me in my boxer shorts with gnomes on them and say, oh, this guy's worth nothing. Let's throw him back. But I always had those. I still have them.
Well, they must have worked because you're back
That's
with
right.
us. And
I don't have them on today, but
okay,
No danger here.
No danger here.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So, your book is called Afghan Diary 2010 to 2011.
Yeah.
Were you there longer, or were you there just for the 2 years that the book is written about?
I started in August of 2010 is when it started, in July 2011 when it was ended. So it starts really in Camp Shelby, Mississippi, and it was started as a diary with the idea, I'm going to write this down, share it with my kids and my family so that they understood what I did and why I did it later on when they were able to have a grasp of that, maybe when they were a little older.
So your kids, you were in there when you were 57.
Yeah.
Your mom
Was in
got
our
they got
age.
her permission from your mom.
Yeah.
Your wife was there. How old were your kids when you left?
Oh, that's a good question that I don't know. My wife would know the answer to that. I don't keep track.
You can go ish, like
Well, they were
30s, 40s.
30s.
They were in
Yeah.
their 30s?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What did they think of, or how did you tell them, hey, I'm going to Afghanistan?
I just told them all, hey, I want to join the Guard. And my one daughter was married to a full-time Army.
Okay.
So she got it. Because I didn't ever want to face the question, well, you're a social worker. What are you doing to help fight suicide problems for military members? And I wanted to be able to say, well, this is what I did. And I also joined because when I sat across the table from somebody in the military, I wanted to be able to look them in the eye and say, hey, I'm in the club too.
Ah.
I'm in the club too. I get it. I went basic training just like you. It may not have been as hard as yours, but I was there. Went through the tear gas chamber just like you did. I passed the physical fitness test just like you did. And my idea was I'm going to do everything all the enlisted people do so that they saw there wasn't any favoritism because of my age and the fact that I was an officer. That was very important.
I think that speaks volumes to people that you're actually doing the work and not just saying, hey, I know this is what you're going through, even though you hadn't. Yeah.
So that was my plan. We did basic training at Fort Sam Houston in Texas.
Okay.
And this was fun to do. I enjoyed every minute of it. It's in San Antonio. And if you remember your history, this is where Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders did a lot of their training. And they hung out at a bar in the Menger Hotel, which is just across the street from the Alamo. So this was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. So my buddies and I one day had our uniforms on. We went to the Alamo because that's what you do.
You got to remember the Alamo.
You got to remember the Alamo. And then we went into the Menger Hotel, to the same bar where Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders hung out, to have a burger and a beer. So, that was just...
You're walking in history there.
You bet. And that was another important thing to do. So I could go on. Let me tell you more stories here. This is another basic training story. One of the skills you have to go through as a soldier, and by the way, the first day of basic training, they said to us, we were all medical people, they said, you are a soldier first. And you better remember that. You're a soldier first, whatever your profession is. So one of those soldiering skills you had to have was the ability to read a map and find things by reading a map. Okay. So we all learned how to read a map. We all learned how to find points on the map just by following compass headings and to do that. And we had to do that both in the daytime and the nighttime. So before we started the nighttime exercise, they told us, they said, if you come to a fence, do not climb over the fence because that's a boundary. And you're going outside of our training area. Well, these were all very educated people who were literal thinkers. So they said, well, you didn't say anything about climbing under the fence. You just said don't go over the fence.
About finding a gate and going through the fence.
Yeah, so certainly, as you might expect, there were 2-3 people went under the fence and got lost. And so about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, they had to do what's called an accountability. All right, so they started counting heads, and they said, there's not enough heads here. Who's missing? And they eventually found there were 2, both doctors, who'd gone under the fence. And just said, come on, Doc, get with it here. So
I bet you they didn't do that again,
I
did
bet
they?
you they didn't either. But they learned how to use a map and compass, which is a good skill to have. Know where you're at, know the directions, know the cardinal directions, and things like that.
Because you don't always have Google Maps where you're going.
You don't have Google Maps, right?
Or Garmin,
or Garmin. I always carried a compass with me and a signal mirror. And I knew enough Morse code that I could send my first name, Dan, in Morse code, so that if I see a helicopter flying overhead, I can flash the helicopter, so they would say, who's that crazy guy down there named Dan? So it was good times. Now let me tell you a coming home story, and then I'll let you guys ask some questions.
All right.
Okay. So we're coming home, and before we leave, they lock us down and make sure we don't have any contraband on us. And then we fly from Afghanistan to an air base in Kyrgyzstan.
How far away is that from Afghanistan?
About an hour and a half flight. Not very long at all.
Okay.
So we fly into Kyrgyzstan to Manas Air Base. All right. We spend the night there. And the next morning we all get loaded up in the plane flown by the Air Force. It's important to know that. to come back to the States. All right, so we get on the plane and we're sitting there and it's hotter than heck. It's just, we're melting in there and you can't figure out why we're not leaving. And pretty soon the pilot comes on and says, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're a little bit too heavy and we're trying to decide whether to have some of you deplane or have some of your luggage deplane. And we're thinking, oh, luggage. And so pretty soon outside the window of the plane, you see a mountain of green duffel bags growing. And so we're all saying to ourselves, I'll never see that again. There's going to be some happy Kyrgyzstanis running around with a lot of good loot. All right, so we take off and we're flying along, and they say, well, we got to stop and gas up. Okay, so they stop in Shannon, Ireland. Okay, so it's the middle of the night, everything's closed, there's no snack bar open or anything else. And they say to you guys, just go sack out up there in this terminal on the floor. Okay. So we did. We're tough guys and girls. And we did. And pretty soon, about 2 in the morning, they come and wake us up. And they say, you all got to move because there's a VIP coming through. And we don't want him to run into all you people sacked out here on the floor. I said, go move someplace else.
Oh.
And so we did. And then pretty soon they said, oh, you don't need to move. Go back and go to bed. So we did. And then pretty soon they came back a third time. They said, well, this VIP wants to meet you. If you want to meet this VIP, come on with me. So we all said, well, who is it? And they said, it's Colin Powell.
Oh.
So you're thinking to yourself, Colin Powell? Wow. Secretary of State, ex-chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. No way I'm going to pass up this opportunity. But only maybe half a dozen of us went to meet him. So here we are, middle of the night, Shannon, Ireland, having a one-to-one conversation with Coleman Powell.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. And he said to me, "What'd you do, sir?" And I said, "Well, I was a behavioral health officer." And he said, "What was the number one problem you saw?" And I said, "Well, sleep."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I've been having sleep problems too." What did you tell these guys? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm doing a curbside consultation with Coleman Powell and Shannon Ireland in the middle of the night.
Wow.
This is just too good to be true.
I bet you're really glad you went to go visit the VIP.
Yeah, I thought, well, why wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you? You're never going to have this chance ever again in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So then we get ready to leave, and the flight's delayed for some unknown reason, and then we flew into Wisconsin to Fort McCoy was our destination for our demobilization.
Mm-hmm.
So we get there, and everything's there, and our pile of duffel bags is there, and it was just great.
Oh, so you didn't make a bunch of people happy. You guys got your stuff back.
We got our stuff back.
That's
so
good.
The Kyrgyzstanis lost out, they didn't get any prizes.
Oh my goodness. Well, you have probably 5 million awesome stories, and
Yeah.
first of all, I want to thank you so much for sharing them with us and sharing them with our viewers and listeners.
So there's more in the book.
Okay, that book is available, I do know, by Burlington by the book.
Yeah.
Where else can people find that?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah,
That is your sole...
That's the sole source. I think about other places. This is a self-published book.
Uh-huh.
So when you self-publish a book, that means that you're responsible for spelling and grammar and everything else.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm the kind of guy, when I read something, I miss words. I see words that aren't there and I don't see words that are there and miss other words that shouldn't be there. So I know there are grammar errors, I know there are spelling errors, and I say, give me a break, you can get the gist of the story without a comma.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a it's your diary,
It's
right?
in a diary, and I jazzed it up a little bit to add a few more stories that at the time when I wrote it, I didn't want to share with the family because I didn't want them to be scared.
Ah.
Sure.
They don't need to know about rockets, because they thought I was just hanging out over there on a fob 100% safe all the time, which was pretty much the truth, but,
Right. So, first of all, also, thank you so much for your service.
Yeah. Happy to do it. I'd do it again if they take me. I'm ready to go.
What is the actual cutoff?
Well, I forget whether it was like 35 or something like that, but they wanted healthcare people, so they made exceptions for healthcare people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the cutoff is still 35.
I
You
think
just got a
so,
waiver.
somewhere in that range.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure.
Gotcha. Okay. So, what type of counseling do you do with? Do you specialize in veterans now, or you just do family practice?
Right now, I'm
or-
retired. I retired from the university after 38 years, and then I fell into a job after that, which was a research project. And that research project question to be answered was, can dogs improve the quality of life for veterans with PTSD?
Oh.
So my job was to go to all the VA clinics that are covered out of the Iowa City VA, including, be like Fairfield or Ottumwa and Keokuk and Decorah and Quad Cities, and I'd go sit in their lobbies. I'd just strike up conversations with veterans coming in. You couldn't ask what their diagnosis was because that would be a breach of confidentiality.
Uh-huh.
So I would sit there and say, hey, have you heard that we've got golden retrievers that we want to give away for veterans who have post-traumatic stress? And all you need to do is get a letter from your provider, talk to us, and we'll see if we can give you a dog.
Okay.
And half the dogs were service dogs, which meant they had some special skills.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other half of dogs were just regular, well-trained retrievers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we didn't know who was going to get what.
Mm-hmm.
That was randomized. And we give them a dog. So then in addition to that, we give them a bit of a stipend to help defray the cost of the dog. We give them coupons for dog food. We give them free veterinary care.
Wow, good.
And then at the end of the study, it's your dog to keep.
Mm-hmm.
And so that went really well. The sort of the disappointing part was it didn't have as big as impact as we'd hoped, because in the beginning we all sort of slapped ourselves up beside the head and said, well, why wouldn't they?
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking the first comment would be, no duh.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
dogs
Duh.
improve everything.
Yeah, and the duh was it wasn't as good as we'd hoped.
Okay.
So every time you see a golden retriever, you might want to think to yourself, oh, I wonder if that's one of the study dogs, because there happens to be one in Des Moines County.
Okay. How many years or how long was that trial for?
That was a 3-year trial.
3-year trial,
Yeah.
okay.
And then after that, I've retired
Again?
again, and I'm just waiting for the phone to ring and somebody call. I fall into these jobs.
Mm-hmm.
But since retiring, what I do is I get a lot of chances to go into college classrooms
Mm-hmm.
and give a lecture about what I've done. And I also have an opportunity to talk about military culture,
Mm.
because we're in a time when we're to be culturally sensitive, and there's things about military culture that you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, give you a couple examples. Each branch of the service, you think everybody's a soldier. Not true.
Okay.
Not true at all. People in the Navy
Sailors.
are sailors. People in the Air Force are airmen, regardless of their gender. Okay? So you can't, Marines are Marines.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to call a Marine a soldier because you'll get corrected right away. Okay, so you got to learn that. And then, like the example of the toilet, we all have our own vocabulary. So it's
Mhm.
neat to understand that. And we have similarities. Similarities are that we all still use music as part of our daily routines. So when the flag goes up in the morning, there's music. When the flag comes down, there's music. And there's certain things you have to do when the flag comes down.
Mm-hmm.
A great story to illustrate that. If you Google Marine Corps kids at retreat, you're going to find a video that shows a bunch of Marine Corps kids out on a playground playing. And retreat starts to blow. They all stop playing, put their hands over their hearts, and face the flag.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
That's part of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
My granddaughter, who's a military brat, when she was playing softball on the base, when retreat started, all the kids would stop playing ball, put their hands over their hearts, face the flag, automatically. The whole game came to a stop, and that's what all the kids would do. That's part of the culture.
Mm.
If you're driving on base, same thing. You stop driving, dismount out of the car, face the flag, put your hand over your heart.
Yep.
So one day, I know I'm going on forever. One day we're out at Hickam Field,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew, my son-in-law and I both knew that retreat was about to blow. My wife didn't. Okay. So there's two songs. In between, it's To the Colors and Retreat. That might be in the wrong order, but between the two songs, they shoot off a cannon. Okay, I knew it was coming. He knew it was coming. And I said, watch her. So they shoot off the cannon. She jumps about 6 feet in the air, and we just die laughing because, it's coming. And, I always like the pomp and circumstance
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
of the military.
Two stories on that. There's a video where Robin Williams
Yeah, that's a
was
good one
out,
too.
and the whole audience stands up and turns their back on him.
Yep.
He's never experienced
That's
it. He's
right.
like, "What is going on here?"
Yeah.
And then he figured it out, and he
Yeah.
stood and
Yeah. Yeah, he yells, "What's that?" And they yell at him, "Retreat." And he says, "Oh, I hope not. You guys just got here."
Yeah.
But that's it. That's another perfect example of the culture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And because my Navy experience, 8 o'clock in the morning, the flag went up, and then at sunset, varies different times, the flag came down. We called it colors.
Yeah.
And so in me, it's ingrained. You stand at attention,
That's
and
right.
for the flag, and it has changed so much.
Yeah.
In Iowa, they say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
Every day.
Well, you think about it. You were post-Vietnam?
Yeah.
Okay, so you think about these guys. When the Vietnam era military came home, they couldn't wear their uniforms because they would get spit on and everything else. That's not the same anymore. Now it's everybody wants to thank you for your service. When we flew home for leave, you either flew through Atlanta or Dallas. Everybody east of the Mississippi flew into Atlanta, west of the Mississippi flew into Dallas. There were people there to greet us at the Dallas airport just to make sure that we knew that we were appreciated. So we were walking along on the concourse, and just hundreds of people would start clapping. It was overwhelming just to think, wow, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's a big change. But that's, you teach that part of the culture too. And then as I said, I've been in many, many colleges to talk about what I was able to do.
So if somebody wants to ask you to come speak to the class, do you do high school and junior high too, or is it just college
It's
class?
mostly been college.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
How do they get a hold of you to do that?
Well, they could find me on Facebook. Would
Okay.
probably be the
All right.
easiest way to do that. So, the other last thing I want to say is that I've changed my thinking about how to provide treatment.
Okay.
And the big buzzword is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do research on what the genesis of that is, it is really Stoic philosophy. All right, so if you read Stoic philosophy, this is one of those things that maybe you should have read in college but didn't. If you read Stoic philosophy, it says there are things in life you can control.
Mm-hmm.
There are things in life you have some control over, and there are things in life that you have no control over. Okay, so pay attention to the things that you can control. Pay attention to the things that you have some control over, and don't pay any attention to all the things that you don't have any control over. All right? So driving down here today, if somebody flipped me off in the car because I was going too fast, too slow, whatever, I wouldn't pay any attention to that because I got no control over them. I'm not going to respond to that bait because then I bring myself down to their level.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Example of things I can control. It's raining out. Okay, can I control the rain? No, I can put on a raincoat.
Mm-hmm.
I go with the flow,
Right.
Or if I'm an athlete, okay, and I don't do so well, what can I do? I try harder. I can practice, be smarter. So I have some control of that. Not total, but some.
Mm-hmm.
So it all comes down to Stoic philosophy in my mind. So that's how I look at things. So now you can say I was probably the only guy in Afghanistan reading Stoic philosophers. Everybody else is playing video games, and I'm reading Stoic philosophy.
But hopefully playing video games not up to a couple hours before they go to bed because
That's
you
right.
told them not.
Yeah.
Now, okay, this is probably completely off the subject.
No worries.
The video games that they were playing,
Yeah.
what were they?
Shooter games.
Why would they want to do? I mean, in my mind, you would think I want to get as far away from that environment, whether it's pretending like in video games.
Yeah. They were all hooked on Call of Duty. They couldn't wait for the next edition. That's what they were playing.
Wow, that's interesting.
Do you have some advice for family members who are that their loved ones are coming back
Yeah.
from wherever they're stationed.
Yeah, so you got to understand that coming back, there's a lot of transitions that you go through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a couple examples here. Number one is maybe your veteran doesn't talk a lot
Mm-hmm.
because when you're deployed, there's this concept of need to know.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to talk a lot about that because you don't need to know.
You had to be so secretive for so long.
Yeah, that okay, I don't want to hurt you, so I'm not going to necessarily share things with you. I might answer the questions if you ask it. Another example is there's this concept of situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when you're situationally aware, when you enter a room, you know where all the entries and exits are. Why do you know that? So that you know if you need to get out of there, you know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
And very likely you could be sitting facing the door because if a threat comes in, they're going to come in through the door. So you're going to have that situational awareness going on. So that might think, well, okay, you go to the mall and instead of parking close to the door, you park under a street light. Why? Because if you're parked under a street light, you can see if there's anybody around your vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
It's safe. Okay, but maybe the rest of the family says, why do we have to walk a quarter of a mile to the door when there's a parking place right there? Well, because when we come out and it's dark, I want to be able to see what's around.
Right.
Okay? So that's a couple of things to, that just to be aware of the changes. Another couple of examples are that when you go to the grocery store, it can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Think about this. Normally when you go to DFAC to eat, you get maybe a couple of choices, this or that.
Mm-hmm.
So you either eat this or that, that's all. That's it. Well, when you go to the grocery store, when you go to Hy-Vee, my God, there's 300 kinds of cereals.
Mm-hmm.
It's overwhelming. Or you're standing in line at Subway with some nice mother and their little kid, and the mother's trying to be kind to her little kid by saying, do you want this or that or this or that? And pretty soon you begin to think to yourself, just tell the little guy you're getting mustard. Eat it or don't.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. And, sometimes the irritation can be overwhelming like
Mm-hmm.
that. And so other behaviors, driving. Particularly for the vets coming back from Iraq, when they drove down the interstates and came to a bridge, they would suddenly switch lanes because there might be somebody up on the bridge with a block going to throw it through your window. So it's like all of a sudden you come up to the bridge and bam, you're switching lanes.
Right.
All right. Or you pull up behind somebody really close, you're supposed to get out of my way. And if you don't, I'm just going to give you a blast of the 50 cal over the top of your vehicle. Well, yeah, you get in trouble for that kind of stuff.
See, I told you I need a 50 cal.
You need a 50 cal, or at least one that
So
looks
funny.
like a 50 cal, or
Yes.
a broomstick painted black, or just something like that. Just
A warning shot.
a little warning shot, or somebody tailgates, all that kind of stuff, because you're used to that situational awareness,
Mhm.
and that if you don't turn that off,
I think some of those things never turn off.
Yeah.
Like I was in from 90 to 95, and I was a gunner's mate.
Okay.
One of my jobs, of course, I worked on the 5-inch cannons on our ship,
Sure.
but I ended up getting. I wasn't in charge, but I took care of the armory. That means I had keys, and behind each of those keys is ammunition,
Right.
bombs,
I know where this is going.
guns. You don't lose your keys.
Right.
And then he marries me.
And, I've been out since 95, and if I cannot find my keys,
Or if I can't find my keys.
I freak out a little
Yeah,
bit.
I'll bet.
I will be late for work, even though I have a spare set of keys. I need to find my
Yeah.
keys.
I'll bet if anybody ever hands you a pistol, you'll clear it first.
Absolutely.
You'll make sure there's
Yep.
the magazine's out, and you'll rack it to make sure
Yep.
it's clear.
Well,
We
just
went-
last weekend,
When
took
shooting at my mom's house.
took my youngest and we were shooting, and I went through every,
Yeah,
and when he didn't do something right, I'm like, hey,
exactly.
That's
the only way you're going to learn.
yeah.
is-
And another thing that bugs me, I don't like my kitchen cabinets left open.
Uh-huh.
Kids will come through, they'll do dishes, put dishes away, and then they'll walk out of the room, and
I'm just glad they put the dishes away.
Yeah.
all my cabinet
Little victory.
doors are open.
Yeah.
And that bugs me because why? You got to stow things away so they don't become missile objects when the
That's
ship
right.
rolls and stuff like this.
Our kitchen doesn't roll that much, though,
But
unless the
I-
kids are running through.
Yeah.
But
It's hard to shake.
It's hard, very hard. And
I
I'll
didn't
bet
know
you,
that's why that bothered you.
Yes.
And I'll bet you anything there's a correct way to fold your T-shirt.
I forgot. I know it's skinny, fat, skinny, or
Yeah.
fat, skinny. Yeah,
You
there
fold it
there
in
is.
half, then you fold the arms in, and then into thirds. And then
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a way.
So
You
yeah,
can practice that one more.
um,
I'll close the cupboards. You start practicing your folds. We will come to a compromise on this.
yeah. So yeah, that's why I don't like the.
I never knew that because I'm like, he came through the kitchen and I was rearranging things. So I was taking some stuff out and I was rearranging things. And so I want my cupboards open so I can sit there and ponder, what is the best way to put my cups up? And he comes by and goes, and he starts, I'm like, leave them open. Get out of here. I'm doing something.
Well,
I've
here's a
got
little
project.
here's a little
Now
tip.
I know.
Don't ever move his keys. Never. Things go in a place for a reason.
Yes, and when she loses her keys, I freak out because
And I'm like, they'll show up. It's all good. They'll show up. They'll come back
You
home.
got to think about this. If you're laying in your bunk at night and the bad guys come, should be able to do like this and get your weapon or your flashlight or whatever you're going to need, your helmet, your body armor. It better be right there. So if you move that and it's not there, that's big trouble.
That probably is why when I rearrange your little shelf by your side of the bed, well, I don't rearrange it. I straighten it up. That probably drives you nuts then because I
even
know
though
it drives you nuts.
it may be chaos, I know exactly where I put things.
right.
See, you have just saved us. No, I'm
You're
kidding.
welcome. That's a little free marriage counseling. I'll just throw in today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah. So, what do you? What would you say would be one of the most heartbreaking things that you maybe have realized about veterans' situation over in?
Well, one of the more heartbreaking things was when veterans get taken advantage of by their families.
Okay.
So you take a young person who maybe for the first time in their life has a steady income.
Mm-hmm.
Checks automatically deposited in the bank back home, and you give someone in the family access to that account, thinking it's going to be safe. And family cleans them out. So
Does that happen a lot?
Oh, fair amount, yeah. So all of a sudden, that money you thought you had put away for whatever you were going to buy is gone. His family cleaned you out.
Yeah, especially if they're over there, overseas, and they're
Yeah.
putting this money away. Because what are you going to spend your money on?
That's right.
Besides, having somebody do your laundry or whatever.
That's right.
Uh,
Getting that haircut.
you're expecting tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
wow.
Now, the Harley's dealership can help you spend that real quick, because there was a Harley dealership at Bagram Air Base. And so you go to the Harley dealership at Bagram, and they'd say, well, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Burlington. Oh, well, let me see. Yeah, there's a dealership in Burlington. What kind of bike do you want? Okay, no worries. We'll have it ready for you when you get home.
Yep.
Did it happen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so they got their bike when they got home.
Well, they probably got it, but, who knows what percentage interest they were paying, because you know how kids are. It's all about the monthly payment, not about the interest.
Right.
Uh-huh.
We not just Harleys, but motorcycles in general, or any dealership around the base. Especially the motorcycles, they were E1 killers.
Yeah.
Because you'd get, little Johnny out of basic training.
Yeah.
And he's got this small check that comes out on the 1st and the 15th.
Yeah.
And those dealerships are like, we can get you anything you want. All you got to do is sign here, and we'll take it out of your check.
There's not a military base in the United States that doesn't have a car or motorcycle dealer shop or a pawn shop very close to the front gate.
Yes. Yep. I unfortunately visited
Is that
quite
part
a
of
few
the
pawn shops when I was in the Navy.
I bet you did. Is there like when people are in basic and things like that, is that something that they're kind of forewarned about?
I don't know. Having not gone through the enlisted people's basic, I don't know, but it's clearly an issue.
Because I think that especially, if you're taking care of the people that are taking care of the country, that might be something that would be very important. Just some basic finance things.
I wish. I don't know if that's done or not.
Maybe because that could add to stress later on too, and just everything else. With that could be an easy thing that could, at least be talked about. So
yeah, and there's probably a tattoo shop too, and not to mention the strip clubs and the other kinds of sundry places designed to separate you from your money.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep. What would you categorize as your most successful?
All right. The most important thing that I did, to me, was that in April 2011, there was a suicide bombing attack at one of the FOBs. And during that suicide bombing attack, an Afghani dressed like a soldier walked into a meeting that was regularly scheduled, blew himself up, and killed 7 American troops right off the bat and injured a whole lot of people. And I did what was called a critical incident debriefing, where I got to meet with the survivors to talk about their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of them said, I wish I could have done something to prevent it. There was no way. The person walked into the room and within seconds pulled the pin on his suicide vest and blew himself up. So there was no way anybody could have done anything.
Right.
But they all felt like they should have done more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just part of the culture. The other part of that story was that many people in the room were medics. And they were wounded, and they had their eardrums blown out from the concussion. And their first response was, oh, this guy over here is hurt worse than me.
Right.
And they started treating people right away, even though they themselves were injured. And that shows you the quality of the people in the service.
Mm-hmm.
I'm injured, but this person over here is worse than me. So you think that in our civilian world, somebody has a little sniffle. Oh, I'm going to stay home today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I got a splinter. I'm going to stay home today. It wasn't like you were bleeding and you had your eardrums blown out. But these folks all went to work. And they were all from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, all part of the 101st Airborne. So I was glad I was able to do that. I think it had some positive impact, although I don't know.
Right. It's I think that would be a hard thing to measure just because it's you won't know the effects of the things you did. It might not until years later possibly.
Yeah, and you just wanted to say
reflect
to those people, all right, you've got normal reactions here. We all agree that there was nothing you could do. You did what you could.
Mm-hmm.
Be proud of what you did do.
Okay. We talked a little bit about, how families can support their loved ones coming back. How can we as a community reach out to people coming back or people with PTSD or...
Yeah, I think just be open, and there's questions you can ask and questions that you can't ask. The question that you should never ask is, did you kill anybody? You know, you shouldn't be asking that. The question that you could ask, that I always like to ask, is what was your job? Tell me about what your job was. And there's so many different jobs in the military, you'd be surprised of how many different jobs there are. And a lot of those jobs can be transformed into the civilian world and civilian jobs. Give you a quick example. Did you know that there are railroad engineers in the military? Because we still use trains. So
that I did not know.
You could be an engineer in the military and come home and work for the Burlington Northern. You know, certainly the high tech guys and girls. When I say guys, I mean women too. 'Cause there's plenty of women there. But you know, with those tech jobs, you know, plenty of opportunities. And there's management opportunities, and that's a little bit harder to get through. You've been a sergeant and responsible for 6 or 7 people. That takes management skills, and you can easily translate that into the civilian world. Management skills.
Do you help? Have you helped or know of some way that when people are coming back looking to transition from military to civilian, how that in the job field, how employers can reach out?
Employers can just be cognizant of people who are in the military and just let's talk. You know, you could ask the same question. What was your job? And let's talk about how you can use those skills on your job here that we want you to do, and just help them make the transition that way, and make sure that you know what resources are available. You know, we've got a VA clinic here in Burlington now, West Burlington technically, but Burlington, all the same. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, it is.
I think it's actually in Burlington, by Lips to Go.
Yeah. So it's there. And you know, there are service organizations would be a good way to keep in touch too. You know? I know that VFW and Legion would like to have more of the recent veterans involved. So that would be another way.
Kind of building those relationships with the community.
Right. Yeah. And this would be a chance to share stories. For example, we know none of the World War II vets ever talked about what they did.
Right.
None of them. We all probably had teachers that were World War II vets, and we wouldn't have known it. But now you could compare stories. Okay, let's swap stories between Afghani and Iraqi vets with Vietnam vets. Let's talk about similarities and differences. How can you tell a good guy from a bad guy? You can't.
Right.
You know, in Afghanistan, Iraq, you probably very seldom saw any local women. They're all hidden away. As opposed to Vietnam, where they had more of an opportunity.
Right.
Different cultures.
Different cultures, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that the military like to talk to other military.
That's right.
You know, and rather than, you know, talking to somebody that's not had that experience.
Yeah.
I work with a guy. He's a former Navy guy too, and we'll stop in and say hello and, you know, and reminisce a little bit. But, you know, even if we don't talk about you know, old times, we know that there's a connection.
That's right.
You know, there.
You know what a deck is.
Yep.
You know what a bulkhead is. And you know what a ladder is. You don't have to explain that.
Yeah. So yeah, listen to some of his stories. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah. Has it been anything that we haven't touched on that you might want to?
Well, there's just, you know, I think I've said what I wanted to say. I just, you know, encourage people to let me hawk the book a little bit now. Remember what the purpose was to tell my kids their story. I'd encourage everybody to start writing things down. We don't do that anymore.
Yep.
There are things that we do, you know, because of social media and electronic age, you know, it's just things happen so quickly. You think about it. We had internet access in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
So I could post something on Facebook and my family would see it in minutes. It wasn't the case for the Vietnam vets or the World War II people,
Yeah.
It just didn't happen that way. But write it down, tell stories, Talk to your parents. Get that family history. That's really critically important. My mom just passed away in November, and I used those last few times that I saw her to tell me family stories that I wanted to remember to pass on to the rest of the family.
Yeah.
Because there are great stories out there. All you got to do is listen and ask.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we all have stories to tell. You can just think of them. I can look at your face and I know it's lighting up because right now you're thinking of those stories.
Yeah. Well, we kind of have a philosophy of how people's stories, they're sacred.
Yeah.
And they, there's what built the person, and the person is what built the community, and we don't know each other's stories. We are so disconnected in
That's
our
right.
society because social media, we can do a two sentence thing and then say, hey, I've told my story. But no, it goes so much deeper than that. And I used to work at a nursing home, and part of my job was getting people stories.
Sure.
And people say, oh, I don't know what you want to know about me. I'm not interesting. I have nothing to tell. I'm like,
Are you kidding?
you are a walking history book.
Yeah.
I love listening to you, and I could sit and listen to you all day long.
Yeah.
So just getting to know the richness of people's lives.
Yeah, exactly. And think about Burlington and the history here. Just go for a walk out at Aspen Grove Cemetery.
Yeah.
Oh, golly, the stories that are out there are just fantastic.
And that's the primary reason why we do this podcast is we talk to a lot of people from the southeast Iowa, mainly Burlington, West Burlington area, and the reason why I started it is because my mom grew up in squalor. I mean, just bad conditions, and I wanted to get those stories, but she got pancreatic cancer, and I wasn't able to get those stories because that came out pretty quick. It's the same thing with my grandma. I thought, well, I'm gonna get her stories. Well, there'll be time.
Yeah. Well,
There was no time.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then recently, I told my brother and my sister, I said, we've got to sit down
Yes, you
because
do.
we have stories.
Yeah.
And my brother died from COVID.
Oh.
So to me, it's like she said, that the stories need to be passed down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everybody has a story.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Mm-hmm. And our stories are what help other people go through what they're going through.
Yeah.
There's something along the lines, I saw that your story is part of someone else's survival guide.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's your own survival guide.
Yeah. You think about
looking
it.
back.
That's the whole purpose of group therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Is to share those stories so you find about similarities and what worked for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the book is at Burlington by the Book,
Burlington by the Book.
and it is called
Afghan Diary 2010 to 2011 by our esteemed guest, Mr. Dan Grinstead.
Yes,
Lieutenant
ma'am.
Dan.
Lieutenant Dan.
Lieutenant Dan.
Lieutenant Dan. Yes.
And
Yeah.
I like ice cream. In fact, I think I'm going to go to the Dairy Queen as soon as we're done.
There you go.
Have you been to Grandpa's?
No.
Okay.
I know
Dairy
where it's
Queens.
at.
There's a Dairy Queens in Iowa City.
Yeah.
Go to Grandpa's.
Yeah.
Local business, homemade ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a connection.
And they have a drive-through,
I have
too.
a connection to the Dairy Queen.
Oh, okay.
That was my first job.
Gotcha. Okay.
1964 on the Roosevelt Dairy Queen.
Really?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you go to
I
your
have a
story, Dairy
connection,
Queen.
that's
Yes.
Well, Dan, thank you so
You're
much
welcome. It's
for.
always good to tell the story. I enjoy doing it very much.
And if anybody wants any more stories and wants to, quite a few photos in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can see where you've been and
Yeah.
some of the conditions.
And most of the photos are connected to the story, so you just don't see a random photo and say, well, what was that? What was he trying to say there? So there's a connection.
And you also do speaking for people, and they can find you on Facebook. We can tag you on
and
here somehow.
The Burlington Beacon did a very nice story about me. So that's
Okay.
out there too, someplace.
How long ago was that?
2-3 months ago, I would guess.
Okay. All right. So.
And will you be back down doing signings?
Yeah, I think the next one is a week from this Thursday during the farmers market.
Okay.
And we'll be Russ and Ned and I will all be there.
Oh, the three amigos.
You bet. And just sitting with those two guys, just fantastic. You think about the lives that they've led, and Russ being this historian now, all the work that he does is just great. And Ned's a character. I would love to go to one of his sermons one day. You can only imagine what that's like.
Yeah.
He was on the King Kong Trail that dropped on Memorial Day. He did one of his speeches. So if you go back and catch that, that was he did an amazing job. Those two guys are just great.
Yeah.
We had both of them in the studio together because we've had Russ. Russ has been on here quite a few times, and we've had Ned once. But I thought, how much fun, because I see them downtown together, and I see just how they're, they're brothers, and they're more than brothers. They're also friends. You can tell how much fun they have together. So it was fun to get them on together and just kind of watch the magic happen.
Yeah, and if Ned were here, he would remind everybody that he was my den chief when I was a Cub Scout, and that his job was to be kind of a mentor for me when I was 8 or 9 years old.
Oh. Okay. So I want to say that he actually said something about that when they were both on this show.
Could have.
Because it was either then or like in passing or when we were talking to him afterwards. But yeah.
Yeah. So
You did him proud.
I hope so. So all through my life now I say, what would Ned say?
What would Ned say?
Which has probably changed over the years from his military days to his sermon days. To his preaching days.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, so. Yeah. The great guys. Okay. Yeah. So in 2 weeks. So
I think so, yeah. A week from this coming Thursday.
Episode will drop next Monday.
Okay.
And so it'll be 2 weeks from then.
Something like that. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
And we'll put it on the thing.
How do I watch it?
On Facebook.
On Facebook. I'll give you some information.
Okay.
And since you're on Facebook, I'll find you and
just
send you a friend request.
Super.
And then once it drops, then we'll
tag you in it.
Put it on your timeline, and everybody on your Facebook can see it.
Great.
So
yeah,
that'd be nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the lives that you've impacted.
Yeah.
While you're serving.
So get your sea bag packed. Let's go again.
All right.
Wherever they need it.
Yeah, I think I called it a rucksack once, and you gave me a dirty look. Because I was like, I thought they were called rucksacks, and they weren't. I was wrong.
So yeah, I secretly hope one of my kids go in the Navy, so when they have Tiger cruises,
get
to go back.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
Oh, I'd love to go back. Yeah. I mean, we've taken tours and shown the kids, but boy, there is nothing like being out in the ocean when it's pitch black and you can't even see your hand in front of you, and then the stars, just
I'd like
so
that
amazing.
Yeah.
So,
we actually got to take the kids to see your ship, what was left of it.
Yeah.
What ship were you on?
I was on the USS South Carolina,
okay.
CGN-37, which was a nuclear guided missile cruiser.
Okay.
Right now, about the only thing that is left is about 20 feet of the nose, cut it up and disassembled the reactors and made razor blades, and
there you go.
It's
out in Seattle.
Yes, it is. It is
nice to think you're shaving with a razor blade that's atomic.
Yes. Well, of course, I don't shave. So. But it's amazing. I got out of the Navy in '95, and when I found out that the ship nose was left, in was it Bremerton?
Probably.
They have a naval shipyard there, and her grandma lives out there. And I used to live out in Seattle, and it's like, okay, we're going to go back, and I'm going to visit this.
Yeah.
I never felt so much emotion walking up to it and just putting my hand on it and knowing, it's like, oh. And, I still get goosebumps now, because it had such an impact on my life.
Yeah. What other kind of work do you do besides podcasting?
I'm a library and associate. I work at a middle school.
Okay.
So I am off for the summer.
Good for you. Which middle school?
Edstone Middle School.
Okay.
I've worked there for 10 years.
Wonderful.
And then 8 years out in West Burlington. So I'm creeping up on 19, 20 years. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I do that. I've done some radio, and I've been to Bible college, and I try to get out and preach and stuff like that too. So, yep. A little bit of everything.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, all I do these days is study a little bit, read a book every once in a while, ride my bicycle as much as I can.
Are you still doing marathons?
No, my knee won't take it, but it doesn't hurt to ride the bicycle.
Okay.
So maybe I'll go for a ride this afternoon when I get home. I don't know yet.
Do you ragbri?
No, it would be too many people for me.
Okay.
I wouldn't. I like to be able to ride my own pace and not have to worry about running into somebody or them running into me.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, I wouldn't ragbri just because it's hot and really long.
Yeah, well, that makes sense to me.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you can tell I'm a bike rider.
They got the biker tan, huh?
And from here, no tan here.
Yep.
Gloves.
Gloves.
Well, thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
And I got to shake the hand.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, and we will let you know when this
Okay,
goes up.
perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Burlington, thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah,
And
and when you're from West Burlington, when you go uptown to Hagerley's, that's uptown, and downtown is downtown Burlington.
Yep.
Just to keep it straight.
Gotcha. I was wondering how you'd keep them straight.